Everyone hear me okay? Great. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully that's going to work. Can everyone see the screen, the presentation? Fantastic. Um, so yeah, my name is Adam. And for the last year, as Jonna says, I've been the Research and Development Communications intern, a role I'm now handing over to the brilliant Rachel. I'm in year two of my doctorate in creative writing, looking at literature and ecology. And just before I start, I'd like to thank Charlie Rex, previous research and development intern, because my talk today is based on her talk from previous iterations of this conference. She's the most organized person that I think any of us know, and she's been kind enough to make this today very much a joint effort. This is quite information heavy, but it is being recorded, so if you miss or forget something, you're going to be able to watch it back later. So, big question, what's a PhD? I have no idea. Let me know if you find out. What it is not is linear or neat or easy. It is a living thing with its own will and its own desires, and so are you, and you are not always going to be in accord with it or in control of it. I rather foolishly rescued a 6-month-old Husky puppy when I started my doctorate, and she was untrained and neglected and very willful and very wild. She bit my hands. She wanted to beat up all the other dogs in the world, chewed things when I wasn't looking, and sometimes I would sit opposite this monster I'd brought into my house and think, what on earth have I done? Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this metaphor. It took a lot of patience and time for us to trust each other, and crucially for me to trust myself, to trust that I did, in fact, know what I was doing. And the key things really were structure and consistency. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Not Huskies, unfortunately, but PhDs and how to live with them. Structure, I just mean the tools and resources that you can put in place to find stability in the chaos that you've just signed up for. And consistency, how to keep it going over the long haul. If you are feeling a bit panicked, please don't, because confession, I am not the most organized person in the world. I'm really hoping that you will do as I say, not as I do. And that's worth remembering, is that you're going to get a lot of advice from a lot of people who do not do all the things that they are telling you to do. So you just take what you need and you leave the rest. This talk, as I said, is intended to give you some tools and techniques and suggestions for staying on top of your workload. Ultimately, it's about feeling like you're in control, because that's the best way to avoid stress. And the good news is that literally anyone can learn how to manage their work, their time, and their data better, even me. Um, on which note, another confession, I'm very messy. No one will ever see my notebooks. I write in pencil, I doodle, erase, scratch out. I don't color code anything, which to some people is horrifying. And I've always had a really deep envy of neat people with lovely systems. The point is that the things we're talking about today are tools. And your tools, whether it's a screwdriver or a spreadsheet, have to be clean and cared for and functional. They don't need to be pretty, they just need to work for you. Lastly, before we get into the real meat of the presentation, it's taken me quite a long time to realize that a little bit of time spent planning every day, every week saves an awful lot of time later on. So I really beg you get into good habits now. Dedicate a little bit of time each day to your lists, your inbox, etc. I promise it'll set you up for success, or at least for some peace of mind. Not everything is going to work for everyone. Trust yourself to know what's good for you. Things will change and you'll adapt as time goes on. That's as it should be. So, first things first, the absolutely thrilling world of filing systems. We all do most of our work on computers. There is absolutely no way around it. You have to have a filing system. Most of you, a lot of you will be required to do data management training, and this will come up as part of that training. But for example, me, I don't have to do that, so this is something I've had to learn over time. The key is consistency. Pick a system at the start and stick with it. File name should be short and clearly descriptive. A good file name is going to let you know what's inside without opening it. The bad examples here are generic and unhelpful, or they look like internet passwords rather than file names. I like to put dates on mine for reference, especially if I copy a draft to edit. That way I always know which one I'm working on. Avoid special characters and don't use full stops or periods. It makes it harder to read. And I suggest using camel case, which simply means capitalizing every new word and makes it much easier to read. Avoid too many folders inside folders. If you have more than 2 clicks down to reach a file, it probably needs to be moved. And I'm going to share a slide here directly from Charlie's talk because it is a level of perfection I'll never achieve. Here you can see subfolders are numbered in groups and organized from most used to least used. That is an extra step that you can take if you're juggling a huge amount of data, which in Charlie's case, she is as a scientist doing a lot of lab work and field work. So from filing systems to notebooks, I'm not saying I only wanted to do a PhD for the stationery, but it was definitely a reason. My suggestion is use a paper notebook if you can for ongoing daily to-do lists, taking notes in meetings, and sketching down ideas. I'm a big fan of basic bullet journaling, with an example here in the picture. Mine is not that neat. I do find that there's a relationship between the physical act of writing and me remembering stuff that doesn't translate to typing. But I'm also a doodler and I'm very visual, so my thinking often happens on paper. There are many reasons to switch to a digital notebook. You might need to use an e-reader. It's much easier to share notes. For neurodiverse researchers, digital notebooks offer greater customization and have better or more helpful features. They're the best place to gather web pages, articles, pictures, etc. Again, find a good piece of software and stick with it for a while. We do get OneNote for free as part of the Microsoft suite through the university. Don't rely on bookmarks in your internet history. You will lose things. I know this to my cost. Also back up your data and take advice if any of your data is sensitive. If you do use OneNote, I believe you can still access training for that, so check out the research development web pages. And a top tip from Charlie, if you have something on paper, a diagram, a set of notes that you know you're going to want to access often or from different places, take a picture or scan it and put it in a digital notebook, then you've always got it to hand. From notebooks to, well, spreadsheets. So this is terrifying, don't panic looking at this. We're gonna talk through it a little bit. I'm a creative writer. I don't use a lot of spreadsheets, so I'm actually going to cede to Charlie's authority here. This is, again, one of her slides. She says, funded or self-funded, you're going to want to set up a budget spreadsheet, which is also good practice, actually, in your own personal life. Here we've got an example that itemizes the cost, item, event, date of purchase, date of use, and claim would be the budget code or the pot of money that money is coming out of. Include running totals, then you always know where you are. And you can also send that to your supervisor or funding body if they ever need to see it. You will have to account for how you are spending their money. Here in the middle section, Charlie has set up a progress bar that helps her break down her lab work into finite steps and sort of track her way through it. It helps to motivate getting all of those little fiddly steps in the middle done. And again, you can access Excel training through researcher development. From spreadsheets to email. This is a really, really big one. If you take one thing away, listen to this, because you've probably already had thousands of emails. Again, this is Charlie's excellent graphic here. We're aiming for inbox 0 and we're going to be utterly ruthless. You check your email or one comes in. If it's not useful, delete it. If it is useful but not right now this minute, file it into a labeled subfolder. If it's a task that's going to take 2 minutes or fewer, do the task, file the email. And if it's a task that's going to take more than 2 minutes, put it on your to-do list, file the email. Your inbox, I cannot stress this enough, is not a to-do list. I'm going to leave that there, come back and watch that bit again, take notes, and thank Charlie later. So we've talked about managing information, and we're going to talk a little bit now about managing time. Time management is really about two things: managing the detail of your to-do lists and knowing where you are in the larger flow of your project. You will probably need to account for your time to your supervisor and your funding body, so start keeping good notes and records now. Also, good planning lets you make honest choices about what you have the capacity for and how to prioritize. The key is thinking in different scales. You're going to have daily or weekly to-do lists. Spend a few minutes each day updating these, scratching off what you've done, moving things along. Your monthly task list is going to be less detailed, and I think it's useful to keep online to make it easy to access and edit as things change. Outlook is quite a good place to do this. You're always going to have access to it from wherever you are. Long-term planning is always only a best guess, but it is a really useful way of thinking through the structure of your project keeping your eyes on the larger context and not getting bogged down in the detail. So this is an example of one of Charlie's Gantt charts, where tasks are broken down by month. And it's a really good way also of seeing potential crunch points, periods where you know you're going to have multiple things going on at once and you're going to have to plan ahead to manage that. The key takeaway here really is spend a little bit of time every week managing these plans, and you will always know where you are. You'll be a lot less stressed. On which note, some diary tips. You're going to probably take your diary online, which is a shame because stationary, but using your Outlook or iCal makes it easier to access, edit, and share, and you're probably going to be working in a team, particularly in the sciences. It's going to let you see multiple people's diaries at once. Again, a few minutes a week, managing this makes your life so much easier. Color code your time to see what the balance of different activities is, but keep it simple. If you're starting to differentiate different shades of purple and mauve, it's too complicated. Block out days for different locations, and then you always know where you're supposed to be. So here in the example, we have orange for at home, green for the lab. Simple. Keep your Zoom links in your diary. It's much easier than searching your email. You can also add room information and meeting notes if that's helpful. Up to you if you want to separate your personal and professional calendars. I think it's easier to combine them because it's the same amount of time you're splitting across both. Block out your social time. That way you know you're going to have some, and people are not going to drop things into your calendar when you don't want them to. There's a lot we could add just before we finish about productivity tips, and you're going to get a lot of advice over from different colleagues about how to be productive with your time. We don't really have time to go into too much detail here, so I'm going to direct you to the PGR blog. If you go there and search productivity or just have a browse through, there's a lot of great info in there. This is a by PGRs for PGRs blog. So it's people really giving you the fruit of their own experience, their own mistakes in many cases. It's worth having a look in there for some tips. So just before we finish, I said at the top that this was really about keeping in control of your workload is the best way to avoid stress, and that's true. But I'd also like to finish with a reminder that control is not about nothing unexpected happening, it's about how you respond to the unexpected. And as well as structure and consistency, we really have to cultivate some flexibility and not worry too much when things change. So the last things I'd like to say are functional is good. As long as your systems are working, they're good. Efficient is a bonus. Perfect does not exist. Don't try for it. You're never going to get there. Take what you need from all of the advice that anyone ever gives you and leave the rest. And finishing with a cute picture of a dog, because we finally got there. So thank you very much. I hope that has been useful.